Welcome back to the channel, and this week we're reviewing every single hand from a wild 1-2 session.
For the year 2025, I'm trying to make $25 an hour while playing the same amount of hours at both 1-2 and 1-3. After a solid couple weeks of poker, it's finally looking possible.
I started the year down $1,621 in just under 25 and a half hours of play.
You suck, you jackass!
We were on the wrong side of some major coolers and couldn't string together back-to-back wins if our life depended on it. But luckily, things seem to have shifted in the right direction lately. 2 weeks ago, I went on an insane run at 1-2 and profited $1,087 in just 9 hours of play, winning 3 out of 3 sessions. I followed that up with another insane run last week by winning another 3 out of 3 sessions at 1-3 and profiting $914 in just over 7 hours of play. We made an insane 4-bet with the ace-8 offsuit that worked out in our favor, but unfortunately that video got taken down and I couldn't figure out why, so I think it's gone forever. Regardless, we're currently on a 6-session winning streak, and for the first time all year, we are finally profitable in 2025. We're up $380 in just over 41 and a half hours of play for an hourly win rate of $9.14. Obviously not where we want to be, but the goal is to stay in the positive for the rest of 2025 and exceed that $25 per hour mark when it's all said and done. We head out to the nicest card room in Northern California, which is none other than Stone's Gambling Hall. We buy into the 1-2 game for the max of 300, and let's see if we can continue the winning streak and make it 7 wins in a row. In our first hand of the day, we got dealt King 3 offsuit and tossed it right back where it belongs, which is in the trash. We then folded Jack 6 of spades, 9-5 offsuit, Ace 9 offsuit to an early position raise since you'll most likely be dominated, 10-3 offsuit, and 4-3 offsuit. We then raised Jack 10 offsuit in the hijack to $10 and got a couple calls, but on an ace high board I just gave up and folded to a bet. And for obvious reasons, we folded 6-3 of hearts, 10-3 of spades, and 8 deuce offsuit till our first interesting hand of the day. For hand number 11, there's one limp in middle position. Low jack raises to $15, and I'm in the $4 straddle and look down at 6-4 diamonds. For only $11 more, it's time to defend my straddle. I put in the call, and so does the player in middle position, going 3 ways to a flop with $45 in the middle of Jack 6-3 rainbow, giving us middle pair. I start off with the check. When action gets checked around, there's a good chance we have the best hand. Turn isn't great in the 10 of hearts, so I check to see what our opponents do. Now the original raiser throws out a bet of $30. To me, this seems like the perfect spot to bluff with a hand like King Queen, Ace Queen, or Ace King, because both players check to him twice, not showing much strength. I also think the player in middle position would have bet a Jack or 10 by now, so I'm sensing weakness from him. So even though we only have third pair, I think we're still ahead of both players. So I put in the chips, and surprisingly so does the player in middle position. With 135 in the middle, we're looking for a 6, 4, or low blank, but it comes out the ace of diamonds, and we're now sitting here with fourth pair. Checks to the original raiser who throws out a bet of some amount, and now we just have the obvious fold and just gotta move on to the next hand. We then fold Jack 4 hearts in the big blind to a raise and get rid of Jack 7 offsuit as fast as possible. Then for hand number 14, under the gun limps. Under the gun 1 raises to $10, and I'm on the button and look down at pocket 6s. I think a 3-bet would be too light against an early position open, so I decide to just stick in the call and go set mining. Under the gun calls the $10 as well, and we go to a horrible flop of Queen Jack 10 rainbow, and we all check it around. Turn is the deuce of clubs that gets checked through again, and river is the 4 of hearts. Under the gun now bets out for $30, and when it's folded to me, I had a sincere question.
Fourth pair good?
I obviously don't think it is, so I just fold and live to see another day. We then fold one of our favorite starting blackjack hands in 7-3 offsuit, fold Queen 10 offsuit over 3 limps, and folded 10-5 offsuit, 5 deuce offsuit, 8 deuce offsuit and called a raise with jack 10 offsuit and queen 7 of spades in the big blind, but missed completely. So we're down $100 even, and I hate being below 100 big blinds, so I add on $100 to my stack to get to the max, and we're now into the game for 400 total. Thanks for hanging in with me so far, because I promise things are about to pick up drastically. Next hand up, under the gun limps for $2, button calls, and I'm in the small blind and look down at ace 4 offsuit. For $1 more, I'm in there, and the big blind checks their option. Going 4 ways to a flop of ace 6 deuce rainbow, giving us top pair dogshit kicker. No point in betting on this drive aboard, so I check. When it gets checked to the button, he bets $5. Easy flat call here, so I throw in a red chip and everyone else folds. Turn 3 of clubs gives us additional equity with the straight draw, and I check again, and now the button throws out the same bet of $5. He could still have us beat with a better shitty ace, so I elect to just call and see a river. River 10 of hearts goes check check, and we win against 8-6 of clubs. After 22 hands, we finally scoop in our first pot of the day. For hand number 23, 2 people called to $2, and now the low jack raises to 12. Folds me on the button, and I look down at king jack offsuit, which is probably my least favorite Broadway hand. Could call, but I'm not looking to take this hand 4 ways, so I try to isolate the low jack by putting in a raise to 35, but the under the gun player ruins our plans and cold calls. Now the low jack is obviously getting a great price, so he calls the extra $23, making this a multi-way pot, which is not what we wanted. Cold calls from under the gun are usually small pocket pairs or suited Broadway hands, and not much else. With 105 in the middle, we get an interesting flop of ace 8-3 with 2 hearts. Checks to me, and even though we only have king high, I think it's worth taking a stab in bluffing since I have all the ace jack, ace queen, and ace kings in my range, while our opponent's ranges are capped. In these spots, you don't need a size big at all, because they either have an ace or they don't. So I throw out a bet of $30, and our plan goes to shit because both players put in the call. Pot's now up to 195, and the turn peels off the 6 of clubs. Checks to me again, and I think there's only 2 moves. Go all in, or check and give up. If just one player called, I'd feel more confident in bluffing, but in my opinion, trying to get 2 1-2 players off a top pair is simply lighting money on fire. So I check, and river peels off the deuce of spades. Checks to me again. If I was to bet here, my line would make 0 cents, so I let these guys know what's on my mind.
Don't think I could bluff 2 people.
So I check it back, and early position is hesitant to show, but the low jack shows ace 4 spades for the winner. Player in early position definitely threw a wrench in my plans, because this would have been a way easier spot to manage heads up. At this point, we're now stuck exactly $155, and we're gonna need to get things going in the right direction if we want any chance at continuing this winning streak. We then fold king 9 offsuit, king 3 offsuit, 6-4 offsuit, 8-3 offsuit, and 5 deuce offsuit before we get involved in a wild one in hand number 29. For this hand, I'm in the $4 straddle, and 4 people end up calling the $4 before action's on me.
Oh, let's see. Ooh. 1, 2, 35.
After looking down at the jackasses, I count how many limpers there are and decide to raise the price of poker to $35. First limper calls, third limper calls, and everyone else gets out of the way. Going 3 ways to a flop with 120 in the middle of jack 8-6 with 2 hearts, giving us top set. I decide to throw out the same bet of $35 and just get called from the short stack to my left. Pot's now up to 190, and our opponent only has $30 remaining in his stack, so no matter what the turn card is, I'll be going all in. So after the turn peels off the 9 of hearts, I jam, and he obviously calls. We both turn over our hands face up, and he shows 10-7 of hearts for the flush and redraw to the straight flush. We need some help with a paired board, but we don't get it in the ace of diamonds river, and our opponent scoops in this decent sized pot. Not much we could do there, so we add on $200 to our stack, and in less than 30 hands, we're already into the game for $600 total and stuck over 250. While we're dealing with our chip situation, action gets folded to the button who opens for $8, small blind calls, and I'm in the big blind and look down at king 10 offsuit. If I wasn't so distracted, I'd probably use it as a 3-bet bluff, but I just decided to put in the extra $6 and see a flop. We flop top pair on 10-8-6 with 2 diamonds, and action gets checked through. Turn deuce of clubs puts 2 flush draws on the board, and I can't let them see a free river, so I bet $15, and they both fold. We then fold 5-3 offsuit, call a raise with ace-9 of spades on the button and miss completely, fold 8-7 offsuit, and then for hand number 34, we look down at my favorite hand in poker, which is none other than Jack 10 suited. Folds me in the hijack, and I raise it up to $15 over a $4 straddle. Button and big blind both put in the chips, so with $45 in the middle, the flop comes out queen 8-4 with 2 spades, giving us a gut shot to the straight and not much else. Big blind checks it over to me, and this is the perfect spot to start a c-bet bluff. We have equity to the nuts, which is always a bonus, and then if we get called, we could put a ton of pressure on our opponents with any 9, king, or ace, and if a jack or 10 hit, we might even have the best hand. So I throw out a bet of $20, and they all fold, which I'm perfectly happy with because we scoop in $30 of profit with just jack high. We follow that hand up by folding queen 9 offsuit, 6 deuce offsuit, raise ace 6 of spades but get 0 action, call 10-7 offsuit in the straddle to a small raise but fold after a bad flop, then raise ace king offsuit to $20 over 3 limpers, but they all fold. Then action gets folded over to us, and we get dealt ace 6 offsuit in the small blind and decide to chop up the blinds. For hand number 41, there's 2 limps in the field, and I'm on the button and look down at queen 10 offsuit. Earlier in the day, I folded this hand in a similar spot, but it was player specific. Against these 2 guys, this is an easy raise in position because it not only should be ahead of most of their range, but it's an easy hand to navigate post flop. So I raised to $13 and both the big blind and hijack put in the call. Going 3 ways to a flop with $40 in the middle of ace queen 3 with 2 clubs giving us middle pair. Hijack decides to lead out for $15, and this usually is a weak top pair or second pair. I could raise right now to put him in a tough spot, but I figured I could still have the best hand, and if we need to, we could turn our hand into a bluff in future streets. So I put in the call, and so does the big blind. Pot's now up to 85, and the turn peels off the 10 of hearts, putting 2 flush draws on the board and giving us 2 pair. Action checks to me now, and I have to determine what size to bet. My goal is to bet the highest amount possible that a single paired ace and flush draw will call because we have them in bad shape. So I size up to $50, and both opponents end up folding, which isn't the worst case because we had a very vulnerable hand. After scooping in that decent little pot, we fold 69 offsuit, 49 are suited, 10 deuce offsuit, and somehow win a 3-way limped pot with just jack high until we get to hand number 46. Early position opens the action to $7, and I don't think I've seen him raise all day, so I'm on alert that he has a pretty decent holding. Small blind calls to $7, and I'm in the big blind and look down at ace 4 of clubs. I obviously put in the call, so with $20 in the pot, we're going 3 ways to a flop of ace king 3 rainbow, giving us top pair awful kicker. Original raiser bets out for $10, small blind calls, and I'm not feeling great about it, but since there's a club out there, I call as well. Still going 3 ways to a turn, which peels off the ace of hearts, now giving us trips. We checked the original raiser, throws out the same bet of $10. After the small blind folds, now I have a decision. Should I raise a tight player with the second worst holding of trips I can have, or just call and play it safe? I decide on the latter and just call, because if I raised, I think I'd only get called by better, which is not a good spot to be in. With $60 in the middle, dealer throws out a blank in the 6 of clubs, and I check for a 3rd time. Our opponent checks as well, and we have the winner after he shows us king-queen offsuit for second best pair. I really don't like raising the turn there, because he would easily fold a king, but looking back, I think donking river for a small amount and then folding to a raise would be the best play to get value from a king. But hindsight is 20/20, and I'm just glad anytime money is pushed in my direction. We then fold the infamous Jack 4 offsuit, King 3 offsuit, and raise Ace Queen offsuit, but give up on a 10-7-6 rainbow board. Gotta pick your battles for better spots. Then for hand number 50, we get involved in a fun one. Few people got up from the table for this hand, so we're 6-handed at the moment. The $4 button straddle is on, and I look down at King 9 of spades in early position. Good enough for a raise in this configuration, so I make it $15 to go and just get called from the button. $30 in the pot, flop comes out 8-6-4 rainbow with 1 spade, and even though it's a low connected board that doesn't favor our range, I like c-betting in this spot because we have 2 overcards and backdoor equity. So I throw out a half pot bet of $15 and our opponent quickly calls. Pot's now doubled to 60, and the turn is probably the best card in the deck that's not a king or 9, and the ace of spades now giving us the nut flush draw. An ace should almost never help our opponent unless he hit 2 pair, so this is the perfect card to bluff with, especially after our hand picks up more equity. Any single pair holding should be scared of this card, so I size up and throw out a 3/4 pot size bet of $45, and without much hesitation our opponent quickly folds. Nice to scoop in this decent little pot with just king high. After hand number 50, I decided to take a quick break and reset my mind a little, because poker is already hard enough, but having to record and note take 50 straight hands definitely takes its toll. When we got back, we posted the $3 in blinds we missed and folded 3 deuce offsuit and 7-3 offsuit before another interesting hand for number 53. In this next hand, I'm in the low jack and look down at King 10 offsuit and open the action up to $10. Only the small blind puts in the call, so we're going heads up to a flop of ace-6 deuce with 2 hearts, giving us a whole lot of nothing. He checks, and unless he has at least a pair, set, or flush draw, I don't think he could continue if I bet, so I try to steal it with a $10 c-bet, but he quickly puts in the call. I think all his sets, 2 pairs, and even ace-high flush draws would raise after my small bet, so it's pretty easy to determine his range now. He either has an ace, 6, or small flush draw, and not really much else. Keeping that in mind, we go to a turn with $40 in the pot and get a very interesting card in the Queen of Hearts. We now pick up the second nut flush draw, and any jack will give us a straight. He checks in flow, and now it's time to turn up the heat. I've only shown down value hands at this point, and my reputation is I'm a tight player, so I'm going to use it to my advantage by semi-bluffing. I throw out a turn bet of $30, and he says how he has kicker problems and folds ace-8 offsuit in the muck, telling me how I'm never bluffing here. I don't bluff too often, but when I do, I make sure I have a backup plan with equity in case I get called light, just like the King 9 of spades hand. I then fold ace-3 offsuit, King 5 of spades, raise King Jack offsuit but miss completely, fold 10-8 offsuit, and for hand number 58, we win $12 with pocket nines when we check down an ace-high board and beat Jack 9 of clubs. Hands 59 through 61 were just folds for obvious reasons, and for hand number 62, we're in the low jack and pick up one of the most underrated holdings in poker, which is Queen 10 of diamonds. Action was folded to me, and I raise it up to $10 and get called from every player to my left in the hijack, cutoff, button, and small blind. So we're going 5 ways to a flop of Queen 9-7 rainbow, giving us top pair decent kicker. Checks to me, when you're super multi-way in the low stakes, you have to be cautious because low stakes players don't 3-bet good hands like ace queen or king queen, so I could be easily out-kicked. So I throw out a c-bet of $20 to get value from worse pairs and straight draws while also trying to narrow the field. I get called from the player to my left in the small blind, so we're going 3 ways to a turn with 110 in the pot and see the king of clubs putting 2 clubs on the board. Small blind doesn't check right away and reach for his chips, but then ends up checking. I'm not too big on physical tells, but when I see this move, it usually means they have a hand that's trapping. So when action's on me, I gladly check to realize our equity and so does the player to my left. We go to a river, and it peels off the jack of clubs, giving us the straight, but bringing in the backdoor flush. Our opponent in the small blind now leads out for a bet of $60. I wasn't loving this spot because I still had the player behind me to worry about, but I'm never folding a straight against an action player, so I call, and surprisingly, so does the player to my left. Small blind shows 9-7 offsuit for flop 2 pair, and the player to my left shows queen 10 of spades for the same hand, and we're gonna chop up the pot. I'm glad I didn't bet on the turn and recognize that little read, because I think he was probably looking to check raise, which would have put us in a nasty spot at the time. After folding a couple BS offsuit jack hands, we get back in on the action. For hand number 65, I throw on the $4 straddle and see the cutoff open the action to $10. Button calls, small blind calls, and I look down at 5 deuces spades. For only $6 more, and being last act, I only got one move, which is to defend my straddle. With $40 in the pot, we're going 4 ways to a very interesting flop of 7-6 deuce with 2 spades, giving us bottom pair and a flush draw. Small blind, who has a shorter stack, now takes the betting lead and leads out for $25. At 1-2, I almost never see this move with the draw, and sets in 2 pairs almost always go for the check raise, so I'm mainly putting him on 1 pair. I could just call, but since he's a short stack, I don't feel like just calling and allowing the other 2 players to get a cheap price to hit their cards, so I decided to raise the price of poker to $95, which is enough to put the small blind all in. The cutoff and button get out of the way, which is good for us, and now the small blind goes in the tank. He starts talking about how he's probably beat, and eventually ends up tossing his hand in the muck, saying that he had an overpair. It's important to play these combo draws aggressively because you could get a better hand to fold, and if you do get called, you still have a ton of equity as a backup plan. After winning that hand with just a pair of deuces, we then went on a fold fest. We folded Jack 4 offsuit, 5 deuce of diamonds, Ace 3 offsuit, and Ace 6 offsuit because they're almost always dominated by better aces. Fold King 3 offsuit, King 8 offsuit, 6-5 offsuit, Queen 6 offsuit, and call a raise with 7-8 offsuit but miss completely. We follow that up by folding Queen 5 offsuit, Queen Deuce offsuit, 8-3 offsuit, which is a great starting hand in blackjack, but not poker, Queen 5 of hearts, 8-3 offsuit again until we're finally back in on the action for hand number 80. For this one, the $4 button straddle is on, and under the gun starts off with a limp before action gets to me, and I look down at Ace-6 of spades. Could raise in this spot, but sometimes I like to just see a cheap flop with the suited ace in early position, because according to Negreanu, limpin' is pimpin'. So I just call the $4 and so do 3 other people. Going 5 ways to a flop with $20 in the middle of A7 deuce with 2 diamonds, giving us top pair shit kicker. Big blind and early position limpers start off with a check, and I figured they would bet if they had an ace, so I think I have them beat. So I throw out a bet of $15 to get value from a 7 and diamond draw, and just the player to my left puts in the call. Going heads up to a turn with $50 in the pot, and it peels off the ace of clubs, now giving us trips. Now this hand gets interesting. If our opponent had a 7 or diamond draw, I don't think he'd call a big bet, so I throw out $20 to which he calls again. I think an ace would have raised us at this point, so I think we have his range narrowed down perfect. Pot's now up to $90, and the river is a blank and the 4 of hearts. At this point, I don't think a 7 is calling any size bet, and a flush draw can't even call $1, so now it's time to check and hope he bluffs at it. So I check, and our opponent quickly throws out a bet of $20. I snap call, and he's hesitant to show before rolling over 8-6 of diamonds for just 8 high and a missed flush draw, and our hand is obviously good and we scoop in another pot. After being stuck over $250, we grinded all the way back to get ourselves into the land of profit for the first time all session. The literal next hand, I'm in early position and look down at the ladies, pocket queens, and raise them up to $10. Player to my left calls, and it folds all the way over to the big blind, who also puts in the call. Going 3 ways to a horrible flop of ace-king 5 rainbow, giving us third pair. Big blind checks, I check, and the player to my left, who's a tight player, throws out a bet of $15, and after the big blind folds, I just have an easy decision and toss my hand in the muck. After losing with pocket queens, we then got dealt 7-3 of diamonds for hand number 82 and obviously folded. In these every hand vlogs, I usually showcase 100 hands for you guys, but I was extremely exhausted from battling back while also note-taking every single hand, so let's get to the outro.
I'm glad we were able to battle back after flopping top set with the jackasses and losing a big pot. We had to add on a couple times, so we were into the game for 600 and out for 613 for a massive $13 win.
This is our last session of the month, so let's go over our stats for February. We played a total of 23 hours and 40 minutes of live poker and profited $642 for an hourly win rate of $27.13. Pretty happy with our play in February, and I'm glad to end the month on a 7-session win streak. As for the year, our 1-2 stats are well above average because we've played just under 25 hours and profited $1,030 for an hourly win rate of $41.62, which is awesome to see. Our 1-3 stats are slacking a bit because in just under 19 hours of play, we have a net loss of $637. The year is young, so we still have plenty of time to make up for it. So combining both stakes, that brings our yearly profit to just $393 in 43 hours and 35 minutes of live poker for an hourly win rate of $9.02. We're obviously well below our goal of $25 per hour, but I'm just happy to finally be in the positive and hopefully keep this momentum going into March. Stay tuned because I feel like we're due for a big month soon. Thanks for watching, and as always, I hope you guys run good at the tables, and I'd appreciate it if you could hit the subscribe button to help me reach my year-end goal of 20,000 subscribers.